Hello, people. Okay, well, here is the final part. Yep, it all comes down to this. So, basically, you've seen my last part, where I go over what the main flaws of TV in this decade is, and what my opinions on TV are, and what were the flaws that TV had this decade, reality shows, and the lack of variety. But, you know, it's just... And those are basically the main reasons why people would be whining about TV, besides kids' networks. But what people fail to realize was that TV was not flawless back then either. And I can name some of the flaws right now. Seriously, TV sucks nowadays? Why not go back to the 1960s with the incredibly brain-dead plots of Leave It to the Beaver and the 1960s version of Batman? Or, heck, I don't see how TV could get even more mindless with the 1970s Hanna-Barbera cartoons. And the 1980s cartoons had a bunch of, or mostly just a bunch of cartoons based off toys and made to promote the toys. And the 1990s had a bunch of corny sitcoms. So those are the flaws that the older decades have had. And as for the kids' networks, you know, you guys just let nostalgia cloud your minds to think that all the older kids' shows were a lot better.
Nostalgia, a faulty form caused by a person viewing the past through rose-colored glasses.
But here's the thing. These kids' networks like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and, well, the other kids' networks that I've gone through throughout the series, they did not get any less intelligent. They didn't get dumbed down, and they did not lose quality. You guys simply grew up. And for God's sake, if you can just rewatch some of the older shows by taking off those rose-colored glasses of yours, then you'll realize that some of the older shows are not as great as you remember them. Seriously, I frickin' dare you guys to do that. And yeah, I've rewatched a lot of shows from my childhood, and a lot of these shows were not the same as I remember them. They were not the same by watching them as an adult than it was when I was a kid. And why is that? Because my tastes have changed throughout the years. They don't live up to my expectations. And, it's just, I've gotten more smarter and wiser now. And now, I'm not saying that I don't like the older shows, because I do. But they are not as brilliant as some of you guys say they are. So, guess what, you frickin' crybabies? It is time for you guys to stop watching these kids' networks. I mean, seriously, unless you either have kids or younger siblings who are still in the target audience, you have no reason to still be watching these kids' networks. It's like, seriously, I don't know why you guys are still watching these kids' networks for the simple fact that you're not even in the target audience in the first place. And, it's just... just stop watching these kids' networks already. Or better yet, shut the TV off, pull the plug, or maybe throw your TV away or something, and get a clue as well as a life. So, but really, some of the older kids' shows are not as brilliant as you say they are. It's like one example is Pokemon. I like the original Pokemon, but seriously, that show is not that brilliant. I mean, what's brilliant about that show? Every episode, Ash and his friends go on their Pokemon journey. They meet a new Pokemon or a new trainer or whatever. They help with their problem. And then Team Rocket comes along to completely wear it all off. And as for Power Rangers, what about the corniness that show had? With the cheesy mixture of Japanese footage mixed with the footage being filmed here in America. And how about the retarded plots of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where they would make episodes, like in one episode, where they hypnotize Splinter into thinking that he's Michelangelo, or that they had a pizza maker save the day or whatever. And, you know, there's other shows that I can mention that were brain dead back then, but to tell you the truth, I actually do like watching these shows. It's just, who are we kidding? They aren't that brilliant. You know, they're not as big of a brain trust as some of you guys say they are. Okay, now, the only cartoons that were truly better back then, and I mean truly, truly better, was the old school Looney Tunes. But, you know, there's a couple things that you should realize first. And that is, one, they were made between the 1930s up until the 60s. So they are not 90s cartoons. And two, they never actually were meant for kids. It's like, if you get the Looney Tunes Golden Collections on DVD, then you will realize that these cartoons were originally created for adults. I mean, heck, it even says at the back of the box that these cartoons are for collector's purposes only, and that they might not be suitable for kids. And that's what they did. They released that collection uncut. Alright, now, as for the videos that I've been making out of this TV Sucks Now video series, you know, I really appreciate the positive comments that I've gotten from some of you users, and some of you guys who agree with me throughout the series. And it just goes to show that, you know, I'm not really alone in this. You know, I think it annoys a lot of other people too. And yeah, I have gotten a bunch of hate comments on YouTube, and some hate mail and PMs from a bunch of ignorant people who just can't get a clue. And seriously, it's like, if you don't like what's on TV, don't frickin' watch it. You know, it's just, seriously. It's like, seriously, if you don't like TV, don't watch it. Just pull the plug from your TV and start reading books or something. And so anyway, I am done making this video series. So, do you still want to cry about these networks? Alright. Well, here's your tissue box. Use it to cry your emo tears out about how much these kids' networks suck nowadays. But, you know, so, to conclude this all off, these kids' networks were only better because you were a kid, and you completely outgrew cartoons, which is why the cartoons that they make just suck nowadays. And you know, just looking at some of the old users on Retro Junk, I've seen them say stuff that the 1990s were just sucked, and that the 1980s were a lot better. And they'll be saying stuff like, "Aw man, I miss You Can't Do That on television. I mean, they should bring that back. Now we have garbage like Ren and Stimpy. I mean, what's up with that piece of garbage?" And you know, I bet that the kids 10 years from now will be looking back at the older shows, or the show that's on TV today, and you know, they'll be saying stuff like, "Oh man, Nickelodeon used to be so awesome. They should bring back SpongeBob SquarePants and Fairly Odd Parents. I mean, what happened to that network?" Or something like, "Man, Cartoon Network was so awesome back when they had great shows like Chowder and Total Drama Island. Now, the whole network just sucks nowadays." But seriously, so to wrap it all off, these kids' networks only suck nowadays because you're not a kid anymore. So, and they are for 8-year-old kids, not 20-year-old nostalgic infested adults. So, all I can say is, here's what you guys should do. Just switch off Nickelodeon and go to another network like Spike or Comedy Central. Well, that's it. So long, everybody.